Indeed, Industry 4.0 is an exciting subject, but what's the practical use of it in the context of procurement? I tried to make this course in a way that each theoretical piece would be followed by the appropriate piece of practice. And following the same logic, we already studied the notion of Industry 4.0, and now we have to understand how useful it is for our daily professional life. For that matter, let's look at supply chains. The supply chain has been called so for the reason, because it started from raw materials that were gradually transforming into ready products and then distributed to end users, and everything that we just said has been happening in a sequential way. And this is what we call the downstream. The stream of raw materials that transformed into ready products. So this is basically the stream of material objects that started from here and were going all the way to the end customers. In the times of Industry 4.0, supply chains transformed into demand networks. And as the name suggests, everything in this network is subordinated to the consumer demand. And we, consumers, suddenly found ourselves not in the receiving end of the supply chain, but in the very center of it. And we were placed in the cross-section of the material and information and demand flows within that network. Once again, you can ask me, how important is that in the context of procurement? Let's see. Demand networks have certain attributes that directly influenced the way we are doing procurement nowadays, and why is it called Procurement 4.0. The first one is the customer centricity, and we already discussed that this basically means that a customer is placed in the focal point of the network, and everything else on the activities in the network are subordinated to the demands and interests and perceptions of customers. Why is it important for procurement? Because we are no longer the supporting function that is created simply to satisfy our end users. Our ultimate goal is to directly or indirectly satisfy the demand of our end users. Of course, we don't forget about our internal requesters, our clients, as we used to call them. But our true client is here, in the middle or as the focal point of this demand network. And of course, this is important that whatever we are doing is not meant to just satisfy the requirements of our internal governance or obey to some processes and corporate standards. We have to justify the value of our activities by the level of satisfaction of our end users. The consequence of customer centricity is their identity. They are no longer John Does with identical personas and similar requirements. So, for many categories of products, we will be no longer able to throw the volume of mass production onto them and expecting them to be satisfied. We will have to work with small batch deliveries or individual products in order to win hearts and minds of every particular customer. For procurement, that means that the complexity and variability of our work will increase dramatically. Another aspect of demand chains is the so-called disintermediation, which is actually letting go the middleman. In supply chains, between the original manufacturer of a product and its consumers, there may be multiple layers of middlemen, the distributors, resellers, and retailers, and so on. And each of them were not only adding to the complexity of the supply chain, but most importantly to the price of the final product, because every participant wanted to have their margin. And now we have the direct connection between the original manufacturer and end user. And we can establish direct product flows between them, so they would completely or partially replace these people, and some of their margin will go here, but most importantly, the end price will favorably reflect on the satisfaction of end users, because they will be at least having a feeling that they're getting their products at the price of the original producer. Besides the fact of direct linkage between end users and customers and the original manufacturer, is that there is the real-time exchange of information between them. Before, this information had to go through different intermediaries, and of course it used to deviate or get lost on the way. And now it's a direct linkage between them, and there is the notion of so-called reverse information flow. Instead of a manufacturer throwing the information onto consumers and trying to convince them to buy the product because it's good and it's made for you, now consumers will dictate their expectations and demands to the manufacturer, and this manufacturer will listen and obey to. For procurement, this would mean that in the course of digital transformation, we will have to establish direct digital connections between the market and procurement. So we will have our sensors out there to collect the real-time information from consumers that would affect our inventories or service levels or else. And the last but not the least is channel competition. It's no longer the competition between different product attributes. We are not only looking for buying the best quality product. We are looking for the rewarding customer experience. And that is achieved only through the most sophisticated supply channels, which would include the excellent sales communication and support, flexible and quality deliveries, and reliable customer service, and much more. But as procurement, we would no longer have to think about buying the cheapest or the most reliable or durable materials for our products. We will have to think of our contribution to the establishment of the most competitive, winning supply channel. This is the only way we would be able to contribute to the competitive advantage of our company. So, to summarize what we said, supply chains became demand networks. Procurement is involved in all of the attributes of demand networks, and we will have to think about the value and the contribution of our function to the competitive advantage of the company from the perspective of demand network, no longer thinking of supply chains and buying something cheap and fast and reliable. The demand network is much more complex, and so is our contribution to the competitive advantage of our company.